I am the Executive Vice President for Retail at Workforce Insight. We're a consulting firm. I've been doing this for about 12 years. Recently I was a CEO of my own company. It was acquired last year. In addition, I just finished my stint as president of the Westfield Soccer Association. I was that for 4 years, but most proud of the fact that I coached the Green Dragons for about 7 years. That was my team. That's them right there.
Brilliant, Scott. I like the reference. All right, Lou.
Hi, I'm Lou Kimble. Currently, my title with Footlocker is the Executive Vice President and CEO of Asia Pacific. I've only been in that role for the last 12 months. Prior to that, I was the EVP and CEO of all of our international business outside the U.S. But after living outside the U.S. for 15 years, it was time to come home last spring. So we split the international role in half, and I came back to be based here in New Jersey and work out of our corporate office in New York City and focus on our growth vehicle in Asia Pacific from that standpoint.
All right. Mr. Meana, please.
Yes, thank you. As I'm sure you see there on the screen, I'm the Director of Coaching at New Jersey Youth Soccer. I've been the Director of Coaching for the last 23 years. My role basically is to develop, to maintain, to instruct coaches of every level, coaching kids as young as 4 and as old as 19. I also teach national courses. I'm an instructor with US Soccer. I teach the National C license and also am an instructor of the grassroots licenses. Let's see, what else? I'm a high school coach. I'm a varsity high school coach down here in Absecon, New Jersey, for Holy Spirit High School. And also am involved in doing some dog training as well, German Shepherds.
Nice.
How's that, Coach Ruben?
Hey, it's very impressive. I knew quite a bit about your background and what you do currently. That about the German Shepherds is new for me as well. So you never stop surprising me. And now, Mr. Findlay, last but not least.
Hi, Ruben. Thanks for having me. So Grant Findlay, regional manager, stroke academy manager for New York Red Bulls. Kind of in this transition between both roles at the moment. I've been the regional manager for Red Bulls now for just over 3.5 years. So I've worked alongside Ruben at Westfield since then. Before that, I was the coach education manager for New Jersey for a couple of years as well. And I've known Ruben since 2012, since we did the advanced national diploma together out in Bloomsburg. So, and I'm a spaniel man, so I've got an English Springer Spaniel.
There we go. All right, so as you can tell from based on the brief introductions, I have been fortunate enough to assemble a great panel for tonight's discussion on leadership. And as I said, I've prepared several questions that I'm going to put in front of the panel. And the first question is in regards to their leadership style. So we'll just go with the order that we just used to start out. So Mr. Knaul, how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, I would describe it as empowering. I learned early on, you can't do everything. And it's really easy to sit there and say, I know I can do this better than anybody else, so I'm just going to do it. But at some point, that becomes debilitating. You can only do so much. So you got to look for the people around you that have capabilities. Make sure you're putting the right people in place, empower them to do a good job, and then trust them to do a good job. If they don't do what you expect, then talk to them about it. But you're not going to be able to do everything. So make sure you've got a good team around you, empower them to do what it is that they need to do.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, Lou, same question for you.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing for me is that I'm very direct. So very clear communications. There's no secret agendas. The team that works with me would never leave a meeting with me or a one-on-one session and then would never have to say, what did he really mean by that? I think I'm also very consistent. I think it's important not to flip-flop, not to go back and forth on issues. Your team needs to understand where you stand on things, and where they expect you to want to go from a consistency basis. I'm very open. I think information is a powerful tool, but it's only a powerful tool when shared. So I try to make sure that my team has as much information as they can get as quick as they can from that standpoint, and have a lot of confidence and trust in them to know what to do with that information. And then the last thing for me is that, as a leader, you need to be thinking that your role, you may be given authority over people, over responsibilities, businesses, but at the end of the day, for the people that work with you, you have to earn their trust and respect, and you have to be willing to do that to eventually have an effective team and to be an effective leader.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Mr. Meana, please.
Yeah, I'm going to use some quotes and some principles to describe my leadership style. The first one comes from Brad Meltzer, who is a favorite author of mine, New York Times best-selling author, wrote the book, Ordinary People Change the World. And his quote, leadership is not being in charge. It's about taking care of those people that are in charge of you, in charge of what you do, to help you out, and so on. The other thing is I live by the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated. So I think it's important that a leader be involved in not just leading, but also in getting their hands dirty and in rolling up their sleeves and being involved in the overall process.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Rick. And Grant, how would you describe your leadership style?
It's similar to, I think, a lot of my leadership off the field is came from much of my experience on the field. So things like maybe, demonstrating is something, making sure that people have clear instructions and outlines on what to follow. Good communication, I think, is key to successful leadership. And then I think, holding yourself to higher standards that you would expect other people to do themselves. And as Rick just said, getting your hands dirty. A leader, we've all experienced leadership ourselves, and the leaders that inspire me are the ones that are prepared to go above and beyond, and do the things that they ask you to do as well. So I think setting an example for others is important. And then I think there's a balance between leading from the front, when the team maybe needs for you to pull from the front, and then there's that time where maybe you have to make sure that they're going in the right direction, and that's maybe where you're leading from the back as well. So it's really striking the balance between being adaptable and pushing and pulling at the right times.
Okay. All right. So several of our panel members now mentioned, building trust, showing that, the people that you work with, that you trust them, and also making sure that they trust you. So does any of the panel members want to elaborate on that, on how do you build that connection with whoever you work with? Because trust and respect, for that matter as well, are very, very much key to the success of a good leader. So I don't, who wants to elaborate on that? Scott, you were the first to mention, so maybe if you can.
Sure. One, it's, the people who I work with, or even, on the greater team, is I just get to know them, right? There are times when I'll schedule touch bases with people just to talk, not necessarily even about business. I just want to know what's going on. And I think especially over the past 3 or 4 months, this has been nothing we've ever seen before. So, I want to make sure that people on my team are taken care of, and if they need anything, that I'm there to provide it. So, it's being human, and letting them know that you do genuinely care, but there's also a job to do. So you got to strike that good balance. But I think you got to be there for the people, and let them know where you stand, and if they need help, that you're there for them. So you got to build that trust, and in return, they're going to trust you. If you ask them, hey, what can I do to help you? And they say, well, I need something. And you're like, oh crap, I didn't expect them to answer that. You better turn around and you better get them something that can help them. So you've got to be prepared not only to show them that you care, but you've got to be able to back it up.
Okay. And Lou, I would say the same question for you as well, because you definitely mentioned this beyond the importance of good communication. But how do you build trust within the people with the people within your organization?
Yeah, again, I think in a business environment or in a team environment, you're the people that are looking up to you. They decide, feeding off what Scott said, and I think Grant as well. The idea as the leader is you have to be able to help them whatever they're trying to accomplish, which means you have to have a good sense of understanding of what it is they're trying to do, what their job might be, what their position is, what are the things they're trying to accomplish, and how you can either help them yourself individually or find the tools to be able to help them from that standpoint. And I think you earn the trust of the people with you because you're there for them. You understand what it is that they need to get accomplished, and you can either unlock a door for them, get the information they need, put them in the right direction from that standpoint. And the trust and respect comes along with that ongoing communications from that standpoint. I think as a leader, I think sometimes we get confused between having people like us and have people respect and trust us. So it's not about, for me, it's never been about having somebody inviting me to their house for dinner. But what it is about is that when we decide to do something, or they believe they need to get an answer to a critical question, they know they can count on me to get the support that they need, or to give them the tools they need to be successful.
Okay. Thank you, Lou. Hey, Rick, given your role both as a leader within New Jersey Youth Soccer and as a coach educator, how can a coach do this effectively? Because again, a coach is a leader, and I know it depends a bit on the type of team that you coach and the age of the players, but the importance of trust, and how do you build that trust within a team?
Yeah, I think the panel members said it very clearly that you have to treat people, as individuals, not as players, but they're people first. You have to find out a little bit more about them. What's their family life like? What do they like to do? Those kinds of things. So you have to create a safe environment. You have to create an environment where, it's okay. I'm here. If you fall, I'm here to help you up. I'm working with you, not over you, kind of thing. So there has to be that, that safety environment.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Grant, I do want to follow up with one thing that you had said yourself earlier on about finding the balance between leading from the front and leading from the back. Would you be able to maybe give examples of? Because I could definitely align with that, but I'm just interested to hear from you. How you recognize the moments to step up and lead from the front versus when you maybe coach your team through it.
So an example of maybe leading from the back would be outlaying your vision for the season. So an example in the regional manager role, you have X number of coaches that are on the field. You set the standards, the expectations for what the season may look like, and then the summer season is probably the best example. After 10 weeks of summer, we've all been there. We've been out in the field. It's 60, 70 degrees. We're on a turf field. We've been coaching, 40 hours a week. That's the time when now all of a sudden you've got to go and lead from the front and really galvanise the troops, because that's the time that they need you to step up and be there for them. So if that means going to the field, giving encouragement, dropping off waters, these are just small examples of everyday forms of leadership. I mean, it's not an all-encompassing thing. It's really about what you do on a day-to-day basis to support the individuals. And but I think from leading the back is really just more about the plan, the vision, and the oversight. And then leading from the front is getting in the trenches when needed and being there to support the team.
Okay. And when you lead from the back, if you will, how does it help you build trust with the people within your organization as well?
I guess it's all about success. If you're leading from the back and you're laying out the vision and the plan, and you're good at what you do, you'll gain trust based on the outcome and results. I think from also in terms of your plan and what you're laying out, you're then holding yourself accountable to a standard. you've got to be transparent with your vision. You've got to set the standards and expectations. So I think following through on what you say you're going to do is definitely a way to build up trust. If you're setting tasks that you're going to do and then you don't hold yourself accountable and follow through on them, then you're going to lose that trust quite quickly.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, thank you all. So moving on. So would like to discuss, skills that you believe importantly that are important to have as a leader. So I think I'm posing two different questions here, but they come to the same. So what are the most important attributes of a successful leader today? And what makes someone an effective leader? Lou, can you start by answering these questions for me, please?
Yeah, sure, Ruben. So, I think one of the first things is a leader, especially in today's world, you need to have good listening skills. So and listening is more than just what somebody says, but it's the understanding of, the people around you from a culture standpoint, of values, of diversity, your willingness to take feedback, whether the feedback is positive, negative, or anything in between from that standpoint. Then once you get the information, the communications, you need to be able to filter and then move with that communication, to be focused, again, be consistent where you're trying to go, what you're trying to accomplish. Because in today's world, you need to be agile. You have to be willing to fail, because clearly none of us are going to be successful all the time, and we shouldn't expect our people to be successful all the time. But we need to fail quickly, and you need to course correct and move on, because it's clear in today's world, whether you're a retailer like me or in other businesses, the world is not going to wait for you. You have to be willing to move. And one of the things that I've always thought from both the teams I've been fortunate enough to coach, as well as the teams I've been fortunate enough to lead in business, is that we play offense. You're aggressive, not aggressive in a matter of a negative side of aggressiveness, but you play offense. You need to find ways to win, and you need to find ways to be successful, because again, competition continues to grow at a great rate. The consumer, if you're in the retail business like I am, continues to move exceptionally fast, and you have to be willing to move at their speed from that standpoint.
Okay, thank you very much, Lou. Rick.
Yeah, I mean, Lou pretty much summed it up. I'll just add to that that I think it's important as well to be able to do things alongside of your supervisees, be available for them as much as you can. I think also it's important to be enthusiastic and always have a positive look on things. Try to be objective. I think that's important, but I think being a positive person is very important, and always looking for the positives for me.
All right, thank you, Rick. Scott.
Yeah, so it was funny. I was listening, actually the first question when Lou was talking about, being direct. I think that's so important. Don't play any games, no hidden agendas. Let people know what you stand for right away. And if you've got people on your team that just, they're not right with your vision and the way that you're thinking, that's okay. Find something that works for them, but let people know what you stand for and be direct. And encourage creativity. Like I tell my team all the time, fail fast. Like, don't be afraid. Go out there. Like, make mistakes. That's the only way success comes is trying things. Like how many times did it take Edison to make the radio or the light bulb or whatever, any of those things? Like, you just got to fail fast and go out there and make sure that you let them know that you're encouraging them, and recognize the effort of, hey, you know what? Okay, that was a good idea. It didn't work out. What's your next idea? And then what's your next idea after that? And what's the next idea after that? Just iterate until you find success, and support people in that kind of effort, because that's how winning's done.
Okay, thank you, Scott. All right, Grant, can you? I know you and I spoke earlier today about the important skills we believe, from your perspective, a leader should possess. And you brought up an interesting point. So can you, share with me what we discussed earlier on, and I'll pull up the slide in a little bit as well.
Yeah, of course. So last week we actually did a task with all the academy staff. There's 18 of us in total. So we set the task of, we set up a type form, and we had 35 different leadership attributes. From passionate to open-minded, and integrity, respectfulness, work ethic, professionalism, positive attitude. And we had a list of 35, and basically you had to select 11 of them. And then we, obviously, the top 11 that came in was the ones that we went with. So I don't know if you have the slide there, Ruben. So these are the ones that. So these are the ones that we all agreed on. So it was adaptable, empathy, humility, inspiration, integrity, open-mindedness, passionate, positive attitude, professionalism, respect, and work ethic were the keys. I don't think there's any real surprises in there. What was interesting was humility was actually 100% voted by all 18 that came in. And then, it really got me thinking as well as, that there's some of these that come a little bit more naturally to me. Maybe work ethic, passion, respect. And I started to think about, is there a potential nature-nurture debate there that there might be with players when we talk about their attributes as well, or are all these learned skills? Everybody's obviously at different stages as them, but the most important thing of the task was to lay out the leadership attributes that all the staff must hold themselves accountable to. And when you talk about the leadership team and being a leader, it's important that you always hold yourself accountable to these, because obviously as soon as you drop one, then it's difficult to then hold other people to those standards if you're not doing it yourself.
Okay. I think this is great, but thank you for bringing this up before as well, Grant. So given what I've heard so far, I kind of want to focus on a few things before we move on to the next question. Recently, I sent an email to the entire club in which I shared a YouTube video in which Kobe Bryant was interviewed, and he was talking about failure doesn't exist, which to me led to understanding what an impact it has on your development when you have a growth mindset. And I'm sure many of you on this webinar right now have heard of the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. But nowadays, it's quite common that people have a fixed mindset, which means that their willingness to extend themselves or overextend themselves, for the matter, to try and fail. I mean, Scott mentioned it, Lou mentioned it, like be willing to fail, which is often not something people do that have a fixed mindset. And maybe Lou or Scott, if either one of you want to jump on it, do you guys specifically select people based on an interview that you do as well, but trying to work out whether they have a fixed or growth mindset? And maybe a second question to tie in with that as well, if you find someone has a bit of a fixed mindset, do you do anything specific to coach them to have more of a growth mindset?
Well, Ruben, it's kind of hard when it comes down to that. It's hard to make a leopard change its spots. So I do look for people who are a little bit more creative, a little bit more reaching, who I get a sense might be more willing to go out on a limb and create some of their own vision. And it also, it depends on the role, right? So I might need somebody who's just doing technical system configuration, and how much of a growth mindset do you need? If that person's happy just sitting behind a computer configuring systems all day long, and they're just really good at it. So I think it depends on the role that you're looking at. I think it depends on the position and the type of person that you're looking for.
Okay. Lou, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you and I have in the past have had conversations about leadership and a willingness to potentially fail, but within an organization like yours, there's also limits to, I guess, how much failure is acceptable, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because as a retailer, we always say we get a report card every day, because tomorrow morning I'll know how the sales were today, and we'll give ourselves a grade, however it is, from that perspective. But I think I'll take the question a little bit different way for you, Ruben, to answer it. So I think when you're building your team, you need a combination of people. You're really not looking for any one mindset. So if you look at what Grant has up on the screen here, you wouldn't have 11 strikers on the team. You need people to play different roles, and you need different personalities. And sometimes as you're filling out your team, you need to have that other opinion, that other type of mindset, that person comes from a different agenda to balance off the team, and to make sure as a team you're really looking at all the angles of whatever the situation is or whatever the opportunity is. So there's not a one size fits all. And I think when you end up all with everyone that looks, acts, talks, and thinks the same, then as a team you're really not going to push yourselves, because you're too all much the same. You need that divergent opinion, or a different way, or a different point of view. Now clearly, whatever the key culture or values the team has to have, you need to have some consistency. But even again, looking at Grant's example, where you had everyone voted the same on humility, but then the other ones came in a variety. I'm sure that it wouldn't be on the page if there wasn't a consensus around them. But that's okay from that standpoint. But you need people to play different roles at different times from that standpoint, and you need to have those. You shouldn't be afraid of having people in your team that don't think and act like you are. That doesn't mean they won't be effective with you as their leader.
Interesting. Okay. Rick, from a coach educator perspective as well, and I'm sure you read a lot, probably even more than I do, that you're familiar with the book by Carol Dweck on fixed and growth mindset. Is there anything specific you think that you can share with the coaches on how they could potentially help players move beyond the fixed mindset?
Absolutely. I always say that learning has many beginnings but no end. There is always something that you can learn that can not only improve yourself but also improve your task, improve your team, your players, and I think a lot of young coaches, I think, struggle with that. But it all depends on the individual. But for sure, that's a very important thing. That if you're not willing to learn and to grow and to develop further, and I think you're gonna have a tough time. You're gonna have a tough time with players.
Okay, thank you, Rick. All right, so moving on to Grant, I would like you to take this question first. All right, how do you keep your team motivated despite conflicts and obstacles?
What's been happening the last few months is a prime example of being able to adapt to conflicts and obstacles. But I think what you've got to do is really just go back to basics and look at what your core values, what your mission statement is, what your long-term plan is, what you stand for, and then look at the conflict or the obstacle in front of you, and then amend your goals and your plan accordingly. So it's really about being adaptable. Was in the number one position there on the previous slide, and I think that having the ability to adapt as a leader is important, because there's always going to be challenges. The course of action is never going to always go the way you want it to, and you're working with people, and everyone is individual as well, and how you treat one individual may be different from another. How you treat one individual from one day to the next may be different. How you treat them within the same day may be different. So it's all based on individuals. So I think going back to basics, and then I think it's important as well to, when you are laying out plans, it's be decisive in the decisions as well. I think that builds confidence in your team. I think when you have leaders and managers that maybe aren't sure or indecisive, or seem like they're sitting on the fence, I think that sometimes for me frustrates me. I would rather be told, listen, this is the plan, it's now changing to plan B, and this is the direction that we're going in as well. So I think just reevaluate, and then and I think we always talk about trial and error. I think there's also got to be an emphasis placed on trial and success, because 90% of the time it probably does work out. So so just adapt to what's in front of you and make it work.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, I look at my role as a leader, leading my team, is really inspiring that shared vision, and keeping your eye on that, and then encouraging the team, me included, to deliver on that vision. And it never ever goes as planned, because we work with retailers and we know what Lou's all about. So there's a million things that come up, so you've got to be adaptable and you've got to be flexible, and but keep that vision out there, right? Keep it alive and keep going after it. And I'm known for having my little sayings, and someone would come to me and say, well, I don't know how to do this. The first thing I'd say is, pretend you did. What would you do? Or if you don't have a way, you find a way. There's really never an original problem or conflict or obstacle. So somebody out there has already seen that obstacle or conflict and conquered it. So go out and find them, or get creative and find a way to push through it. People are, I remember, when I first started leading teams, someone told me, hey, people are more capable of doing things than they are aware they are. So just encourage them to find that within them, to figure out how to solve these obstacles, how to solve these conflicts, support them along the way. If I've got insights into things like that, help them, don't hold it back, give them some answers if that's what they're looking for.
Okay. And Lou, I kind of want to tie in this question with something you said earlier as well, because you talked about, when you assemble a team, you want to not just get just like-minded people in, because it's important to, hear different sides, to have people with different opinions in there. So I like to assume that if you assemble a team that way, that conflicts will occur.
Yeah. Again, I think part of being a leader is that you have to be comfortable with that there is going to be conflicts, there is going to be arguments, there are going to be times that the team doesn't get along and have different points of view. And I actually think, one of the greatest opportunities for a leader is to make sure that everyone has a voice that's heard, whether they're speaking on their own, or whether you have to call on them to pull the information out of them when you're having a discussion that isn't easy to decide, when you're facing a tough obstacle and you're trying to come up with a direction for the team to go on to try to accomplish what they need to go or to overcome the obstacle. I think one of the greatest negatives is that person that doesn't have anything to say, and it potentially is a silent dissenter sitting in the back of the room and not being part of the team. So I actually think, again, there's a limit to as far as you want the conflict to go, or how aggressive the argument would become, and it doesn't become personal in that. But I think, conflict is part of life, and it's part of solving any situation or any issue. Is there's going to be conflict at times, and you have to be comfortable as a leader that you're personally either in there with them, or that your team's occasionally going to have those type of debates from that standpoint. But once they all understand each other, once they start to value the fact that even if the decision isn't always what they want, but sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but there's a voice that they get to have, they get more confidence in each other, and they get more confidence in whatever the team decision eventually is, because they know they have that openness to debate, and you're not going to shut them down simply because there's a danger there might be a conflict from that standpoint. So. Okay.
Thank you, Lou. Rick.
Yeah. Once again, you guys are stealing my thunder here. But yeah, right on the money. If leadership were nice and neat and clean, then we would have, no problem leading. But leading is messy. Coach Lou, I thought right on the money. You got to be able to get in there and struggle and deal with these kinds of things when they don't go the way they should. So it's not a straight line; it's a squiggly line. It's all over the place. Leadership is messy. So you've got to be willing to be persistent. You've got to be willing to take the initiative and help people and solve problems. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I've heard a few different things, and obviously it's been mentioned that we need to be comfortable with conflicts. On several occasions it's been stated that it's important that everyone is being heard. So they know that they're valued for their input as well. Now, Lou mentioned something which I also can relate greatly to the team environment when you talk about it from a soccer perspective. Describing a team player, giving everyone an opportunity to be heard, and then having someone in the back of the room who may have an opinion but doesn't share it with the coach or his boss or her boss for that matter. But doesn't agree with and may form a smaller group with others as in dissent. How and Lou, maybe you could be the first one to answer this question. How would you how do you resolve those issues if you find that someone has an opinion, doesn't share it, but then you find that same person maybe working with a few others against what the team is trying to do?
Yeah, that's always a tough situation depending on the individual. So to me, it mostly works out that in the team environment, when you're all sitting together around a table, you could be on a field having a conversation, whatever it's going to be. Once everyone realizes that you're going to call on them as the leader and ask them to participate in the conversation, that changes the dynamic. So after it happens the first couple of times, you realize that you can't really be a silent dissenter anymore, because eventually your opinion is going to come out from that standpoint. And then you also, some of the dissenters eventually realize that, hey, look, maybe if I don't agree, sometimes I'll convince the group to go the other way, or it's not that I'm going to be criticized or whatever. And I think it also then really goes a long way to stop the undermining or having a small splinter group from that standpoint. Again, you're clearly always trying to make sure people realize we're not always going to agree on everything. We all want to hear our opinions. We eventually are going to make a decision and then execute well together.
Okay. Yeah, Grant, I also want to circle back to something you said earlier, because you mentioned obviously the current situation that we find ourselves in, which in our field specifically, although every field and many businesses have been impacted, but in our field has also caused many challenges. What have you guys done within the Red Bull specifically to, for example, keep the academy staff even motivated? I'm sure that they're tasked with quite a few things still, but for many, including myself, it's not always easy to continue down the same path if you don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen next. What have you guys done within the organization?
So the organisation itself has kept everybody motivated through examples of daily touch points, positive articles, maintaining a positive outlook on the situation, and has been unbelievably supportive to the staff. And then every sub-department's kind of taken its own approach on keeping people motivated. So, don't ask me to do it now, but we've got a wheel that we spin in our meetings, and then whoever loses it or whoever's name pops up on the wheel then has to sing one of their favourite songs. So I've unfortunately lost 3 times. So I'm getting better, but yeah, as I said, there's different ways that we do that to keep morale up, but also in terms of motivation, from a work standpoint, I think you now have the ability to probably look deeper into your organisation and how you can actually improve a lot of longer term strategic plans. So now you can start assigning groups. So we've been giving people a lot of responsibilities with longer term plans. So some of the coaches are now setting up an alumni program for a lot of the academy graduates, and they've been leading that as an example initiative. And there's lots of different initiatives that we probably wouldn't have done otherwise if we didn't have, the current situation going on, because it's allowed us to do a lot more off the field as well. So assigning tasks to people that are intrinsically motivated to stay involved with that.
Right. So you actually everyone has mentioned building trust, giving encouraging them to be creative, empower them, and that's been brought up a few times. So you basically, as an organization, have taken advantage of the opportunity and said, hey, you know what, there's certain things we may not be able to do. However, we are able to do X, Y, and Z and focus on the long term. I like that. All right, so I want to tie in the next question coming up with something that we discussed earlier on, and I just tying this specific question in with what I've discussed in regard to the 6 tasks of the coach before, and I've discussed it with many others before as well. But the importance of reflection, reflecting with your team, self-reflection, reflecting on your own actions. Now we discussed the willingness to fail. Rick, maybe so no one else steals your thunder on this one. But is there a specific decision you wish you didn't make, and what have you learned through trial and error, basically?
I think it was Steve that brought it up. People aren't really aware of what they're capable of. I think that was you, Steve.
Scott.
Or Scott, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll answer. I'll answer to anything. It's okay.
For now, we'll call him Steve. You know, that's all good.
So yeah, I really did something that I really regret, and I didn't. I saw someone as not being loyal, and it upset me, and I got the wrong feeling, to be honest with you. I wasn't looking at things carefully, and the person was very loyal, and unfortunately it's a person that I wasn't able to communicate clearly with, yeah, I learned a big lesson there. I took a person for granted.
So are you saying, if I just want to make sure I understand this correctly, that through the I guess interaction that you did have with this person, and maybe even through body language, etc., you felt that that person didn't align with your vision, but
not so much didn't align with my vision, but wasn't willing to work alongside of me.
Okay.
And to work together.
Okay.
But he was very willing. Unfortunately, I didn't read him right.
Okay. So are you saying that, you know, in based on that specific situation, have you changed how you would approach someone in a similar situation moving forward, or even in general? I mean, I talked to you quite a bit.
Patience. Patience for people.
Patience for people. I like that.
Patience for people.
Patience.
I learned a big lesson, and luckily it's never happened again. And this happened prior to me becoming the director of coaching for New Jersey Youth Soccer, in another career altogether.
Okay.
So yeah, big lesson.
Okay. Scott, I would love to hear from you, you know, on this topic.
So this is a difficult question for me, Ruben, and I'll tell you why. One, if I were to list all the decisions I made that I wish I didn't make, we'd be on here all night.
Right.
I think you've gotten the theme from me that I'm a big proponent of fail big and fail fast. So, you know, I've got scars. I've taken a lot of learnings through things. And, you know, I think it's made me just a better leader, and it's made me a better person because I've failed. So yeah, I mean, every day there's decisions I make that I wish I wouldn't have, whether it was, you know, eating that last piece of pizza, or, you know, then in you know, being professional and the way that I had a conversation with somebody, thinking like, no, I really should have been more supportive. You know, I'm reflective in the sense that I look back on those things and I tell myself I'll be better the next day. Right? And incrementally better, just a little bit better. I don't have to be a completely different person tomorrow, but if I can be, you know, 0.5% better each day, you know, after a week, I'm going to be in good shape. So that's always how I've looked at it. I mean, look, I've had my fair share of moments where I've been embarrassed at work, where I've made bad decisions, I've said the wrong things, you know, maybe I've been too creative or whatever, but, you know, you got to learn from them. And you've got to look from those lessons. And I know it seems very cliche, but, you know, you're not failing if you're learning. So I've kind of taken that to heart. And, you know, hopefully it's been evident through a lot of my questions that's what I encourage, you know, people around me to do.
Okay. Yeah, that almost reminds me of a quote I came across not too long ago that came from Jesse Morris, and maybe Grant, you've heard this as well, because he was on I think a webinar or something like that, but it was the fear of failure equals failure. Basically say, you know what, if you're already worried about making a mistake, you know, it's already going to go that, you know, it's going to go that direction, rather than, you know, going out there. And yes, you get hurt sometimes, and it's in many walks of life, but you better get out there and do so and get hurt on occasion than try to stop yourself from getting hurt, basically. Do I summarize you correctly there, Scott?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
All right, fantastic. Grant.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Scott just said. I've got probably, if I was to list all the mistakes, we'd be here all night as well. So I think I've got more regrets over, not so much what I've done, but stuff that I maybe could have done more of. So when I look at my everyday performance, could I have managed, people better? Could I held myself accountable a little bit more? I think an area that I've definitely tried to improve on is similar to what Rick said, is patience. I think a lot of the times, especially when you're busy, you can sometimes have knee-jerk reactions. So it's just having that ability to just maybe slow down, be a little bit more reflective, and make a good decision. And I think that's where, for everyone, you are learning on the fly, and this is why I said earlier, it's not trial and error. If you learn from it, it's trial and success after that point. As long as you turn it into a positive.
Okay, so you mentioned, and I think this time alone already, although from speaking to you today, you mentioned that you're basically filling 2 roles right now. So you're probably busier than many on this call at the moment. But you mentioned that like we all have things going on. We're all busy with work. We're in an environment, society that things are expected fast. So as a leader, it's challenging sometimes to jump on something when people need your attention. You said, like knee-jerk reaction. What have you done specifically to improve in that area, if I may ask? Because I personally can learn from that, I would say, and I'm sure there's many others that can learn from that as well. If you have any wisdom there.
Yeah, to be honest, examples would be, I don't think everything requires an immediate response. If it comes into your phone and it's a phone call, maybe it's immediate. If it drops into your email box, it's probably not something that has to.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
It has to get addressed immediately. Obviously, there's certain things, so it's just prioritizing, and then learning from experience on things that do need to be addressed immediately. But a lot of the times, typos is one as well. I try and hold people to a standard on their quality of information and communication out. And then when I see I've read an email and I've read it, maybe I've not taken that time to just save it, put it in draft, go and get a coffee, come back, and then resend it. So these are just, it's an example of a technique that I'll apply now where, if it's an important email, I'm taking my time over it as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Grant. All right, Lou, don't want to forget about you. Curious to get your take on this.
Yeah, again, similar to the last few gentlemen, there's plenty of things I could consider with this question, but I'll take it a little bit different. I'll go for an angle of no matter how good we may believe we are, or how fortunate we've been in our careers, no matter which career we've been in, there's always opportunities to learn and evolve. Some of the things that we think are important, it should be, shouldn't be, and vice versa. So I had a situation 5 years ago where I let a personal conflict between me and one of my peers really affect a couple thousand people that worked in a business that we acquired when I was running the international part of the business. And the reality is, what I learned from that experience was that I need to be willing to realize that for my team to be successful, I need a group throughout our matrix organization to help us along the way from that standpoint. So in this particular situation, I needed to do a much better job of bringing along my other peer from that standpoint. Making sure that he felt that he was a real partner in what we were trying to accomplish, and what I needed his part of our business to be able to do to support us from that standpoint, and to do whatever I had to do to build support. So whether that was, it took me twice as long as I thought it should have, or it took me 10 meetings and it should have taken 2, or I had to do whatever I needed to be done. And the reality is I didn't do that. So I was too convinced we could figure out how to do it without his support, and that wasn't going to happen from that standpoint. So if I could go back 5 years and do it all over again, I could have made the situation much better for the people that were counting on me at the time to get the support from that area.
Okay, thank you, Lou. All right, so the last question that I want to put in front of the panel, and we spoke about leading others, or better yet, inspiring others. Are you a leader or are you leading others? But leading oneself, and anywhere you go, and if you go on the internet and you start searching for information on leaderships and great leaders, it's often brought up how much the best leaders, the most influential leaders in whatever field, continue to seek opportunities for growth, and they continue to find ways to develop. Scott, I would like to start with you. What do you do consistently, other than failing and failing fast? Because this last question leads into this question. But I'm curious, what else you do to continue to better yourself?
Well, for one, this, right? I mean, I can tell you, like, listening to Lou and Rick and Grant, I've got some notes here that I've taken. I keep a notebook of these types of things. I think, their words are inspiring to me, and they prompt me to think about things. But it's looking for those little moments everywhere, right? I was fortunate. I coached in the WSA, for 8 years, and I got to coach alongside Yvette and Dan Severn and John Gardner and Jade, right? And I can tell you, I look at those 4 people as really, really good leaders. And I've taken things that I've seen and witnessed them do, on the field with the girls. And there are moments that you find yourself, in front of, 100 people, and you say something, you're like, holy crap, Jade said that the other day. I can't believe I just did that. So it's really cool. So, be humble about your leadership position. It's an interesting duality, right? Because you want to be direct, you want to be seen as a leader, but also be humble enough to know that you can still learn how to be a leader. You can still, you're always growing. I think, I don't know if Rick, it was you that said it, or Grant. I think it's like, if you're not learning, right, you're not going anywhere, right? So keep pushing yourself forward. Keep looking for those little moments where you can learn from people and take those little things away. That's what makes a good leader.
All right, thank you, Scott. Rick, please.
So I'll sum it up into 3 things. Scott said one of the things, but that's taking notes and journaling. I mean, I don't know if you can see this, but there's all kinds of things that I've learned today just by listening to Lou, Scott, and Grant. So that's one of them. The other thing is I'm an avid reader. I devour books. I devour books not only about our sport, but books about other things. And as I said, I also need to have an escape. So I get myself in an environment where I'm constantly challenged. So I started coaching girls lacrosse. You want to be challenged. Ooh, that is a tough sport to coach. So, hey, that's going to make me I think it's going to make me a better soccer coach and a better person overall. And then the last thing is, you mentioned it before, is really reflecting. I love being alone. I love just thinking about, what just happened, what's going to happen, and imagining. A lot of imagination by being alone, just sitting down and having a vision, not hallucinating, but just imagining what this would be like.
Okay, your kids are out of the house, are they?
My daughters are old. They're still older. They're still living with us. Yeah.
Well,
for now.
I appreciate that, Rick. I've been talking about the importance of self-reflection, not only as a coach based on the sessions that you run, but reflecting on all that you do. Lou.
Yeah, I think to build off some of what Rick and Scott already said. So for me, the first thing is to always be a student of the game. So whatever business you're involved in, whatever sport you may be coaching, attend conferences, training sessions, get involved with peer groups, whatever you can do to continue to enhance your knowledge and your expertise. I also think in today's world, with so much information available in the digital space, bring the information to you. Set up searches in Google, use other social media tools to pull in the data you need that makes it quick and easy for you to get to the information that's going to help you be a more effective leader and understand more about what's going on in your business or in the world that affects your business. And then the last thing for me would be be humble enough to realize that one of the things we should all do is to follow our competition, and doing that from what you can learn that they do better than we do, not from any other aspect from that standpoint, because you can learn so much by willingness to open up your mind, and the people to work with, your team too. Is some great projects that we've done over time where we send people out into the marketplace and say, look, I want you to come back and tell me 5 to 10 things that your competitor is doing well, not what we do better from that standpoint. So I think it's always important from that end as well.
So Luke, can I ask you a follow-up question based on what you shared with us? Because you're absolutely right. Nowadays, we're able to find anything and everything that we potentially need. But when you go out and say use even the internet, I like to assume that once you have an idea of what you want to improve upon, because you can't just go out and say, I want to get better. So do you set yourself goals? Do you, is it based on evaluations that you do?
Yeah. Again, I think you start off, from a strategic standpoint, for myself personally and for the team, we set up short-term and long-term goals all the time. What do you expect to accomplish in the next, in this current environment, what you expect to accomplish in the next 90 days is crucially critical to a lot of businesses. Normally you would set up, goals for the year and then 2 and 3 and 5 year increments. But you should set up goals for yourself on how you're going to develop yourself. What's your own individual development goals from that standpoint? So, and again, it could come back to what Rick said, where you're going to make more time to read. It could be you're going to make more time to work in a cross-functional team in an area of the business that you're not good in from that standpoint. There's so much out there from that standpoint. And again, it's like anything else, it's a balance from that standpoint. So, there's only 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week. But I've always believed that if it's something you really want to do, you find the time for it from that standpoint.
Okay. Thank you, Luke. Hey, Grant, don't want to leave you out.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Scott, Rick, and Lou have said. Learning from others, being humble, reflection, being open-minded, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. And I said to you earlier, that this is an environment, I do feel sometimes a little bit uncomfortable in, and I think it's important to find those moments to put yourself in those scenarios. I think just to kind of add on that, there's formal and there's informal learning, there's formal, and then there's in the role learning as well. I think it's important to learn from knowledge and experience. Kind of goes back from the last question about, for me, following my gut is probably an area that I wish I'd done a little bit more. Taking into account opinions, but still making my own opinion and making my own judgment is probably my biggest regret that I haven't done as well, which is, based on your knowledge and experience of the position. And I think just off the field, I could definitely do better in terms of my discipline and time management. I think, holding yourself accountable to learning, less Netflix, more podcasts, these are the sort of things that I could definitely do better on. And I think that would definitely help me grow as a leader.
I do want to blame you for recommending Peaky Blinders, by the way. I talked about Netflix. So we're a little past 9 o'clock, so obviously I'm really, really thankful for the time that all these 4 gentlemen have given us. Before we wrap it up, I do want to see if there's anyone that's currently on that has a question, and if they have a question, just do we have a chat? We don't even have a chat, I believe, right now. So to let me know, just unmute yourself and let me know if you have a question, and ask the question. And if you have a specific panel member in mind that you want to answer your question, obviously let us know as well. So this is your opportunity if you have any questions you would like to get answered. Wow. It was so good, gentlemen, that no one has any questions. You've overwhelmed them with. Now, I'm perfectly fine with it, but no one has any questions. Obviously, I want to thank Scott, Grant, Rick, and Lou for their time. I know they're busy men, but when I reached out, they were all very eager to jump on online today for this specific webinar. There's a couple of questions coming through, actually, so let me... All right. There is a chat feature. Thank you, Eric. But Yvette is already saying thank you. So if you guys don't have any questions, if you have a question, let me know now. Otherwise, I said I'm just going to wrap it up. To be mindful of the time of those 4 that did help out. Normally, like in person, you would shake one another's hand and you give potentially a gift to the panel member or something like that. But I sadly are unable to do so. And hopefully,
We'll give you an air hug.
Air hug, something like that. We got to get creative. So we're talking about the new normal. We may for a while not be able to do things like that. But again, I found this very worthwhile. I hope everyone that tuned in found it very worthwhile as well. I actually did also record most of this, so we'll find a way to get this out to everyone. And again, Scott, Lou, Grant, and Rick, thank you very much for coming on tonight. I've known all of you guys now for either the last year or the last couple of years. I mean, Grant mentioned how far we go back, but I talk to you guys quite often, and I would consider you friends, mentors, and I think highly of all 4 of you. The fact that you guys were willing to come on, again, I can't say enough. I thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thanks, Ruben.
For inviting us.
Thank you, Ruben.
All right. So by this, I'm just going to wrap it up. Log out when you guys are ready. And again, this was great.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Thank you.